In the heart of Africa, where the desert winds whisper forgotten dreams, a young leader dared to challenge an empire of corruption. They called him reckless. They said his vision would crumble like sand beneath the sun. But he saw something greater, a nation rising from dust, united under one purpose: freedom. As enemies closed in and hope flickered, one question remained. Would his courage be enough to ignite a revolution? Or would the darkness silence another African dream before it could take flight? Before the world began to whisper his name, he was simply a son of the soil, a man who walked the same dusty roads as the people he would one day lead. Each morning he rose before the sun, not to command soldiers or make speeches, but to listen to the farmers struggling to feed their families, to the mothers praying for peace, to the young who dreamed of a future that seemed forever out of reach. He saw his homeland's beauty, but also its scars. The silent suffering beneath, foreign influence, the weight of poverty, and the betrayal of leaders who had traded integrity for comfort. In every corner of the land, he felt the heartbeat of a nation waiting for someone who would no longer bow to fear. Yet, he was not born a hero. Doubt shadowed his steps. Every move he made risked not only his life, but the fragile hope of his people. He knew the storm was coming. Whispers of unrest, foreign threats, and those who would stop at nothing to silence him. Still, he stood firm, believing that a single spark of courage could set a continent ablaze with change. And as the first signs of rebellion began to stir across the desert winds, one truth echoed in his heart: to lead was not to rule, but to serve, even when service demanded sacrifice. The wind began to change. What started as whispers of hope soon thundered into chants in the streets. Farmers leaving their fields, students raising their fists, soldiers questioning their orders. The people had awakened, and their leader's voice had become the spark they clung to. But in every story of freedom, there are those who profit from chains. The powerful grew restless. Boardrooms filled with foreign suits and local elites plotted in silence. They saw his movement not as a dream, but as a threat, one that could unravel the control they had stitched into every part of the nation's veins. Money, influence, and weapons moved quietly, like shadows preparing to strike. Soon, the attacks began, not with bullets, but with lies. They called him a traitor, a dictator, a man drunk on power. The same media that once ignored his people's pain now twisted his every word. Each broadcast was a dagger aimed at his heart, each headline a warning: fall in line or fall altogether. And yet, he did not yield. Night after night, he stood before crowds under flickering lights, his voice steady even when his hands trembled. "We do not seek war," he said. "We seek dignity." But dignity was costly. Supplies vanished. Allies turned away. And in the darkness, those he trusted began to disappear, one by one. Still, something in him refused to break. When the threats reached his family, he moved them to safety and returned alone to his post. His eyes no longer carried fear, only fire. Then came the turning point. A convoy of government trucks meant to deliver aid was intercepted, not by enemies, but by those sworn to protect the people. The leader stood before his nation and declared that corruption would no longer wear the mask of power. That day, the ground trembled, not from bombs, but from the roar of a people who had finally remembered their strength. But victory came with a price. The more he resisted, the more relentless the forces against him became. Rumors spread of foreign agents moving across borders, of betrayal within his own ranks. And as the sun set over the desert horizon, one question burned brighter than ever. How far must a leader go to defend the soul of his nation before the nation itself turns against him? The night the storm finally broke, the air was heavy with silence, the kind that comes before history changes its course. The leader stood before the gates of the capital, surrounded. The first gunshot cracked the silence. Chaos erupted. Smoke swallowed the streets. Yet amid the screams and thunder, he did not run. He walked forward, unarmed, through the haze, a single figure against an empire of greed. Bullets tore through banners of unity, shattering glass and illusion alike. Still, he moved, his steps slow but certain, every heartbeat echoing the same unspoken vow: Africa will not kneel again. Then came betrayal, the blow that cut deepest. A trusted ally, the one who had sworn loyalty beside him, turned his weapon not toward the oppressors, but toward the very man who had inspired the fight. For a moment, the world stopped. The people gasped. And as he fell to his knees, blood mingling, the oppressors had silenced a man, but in doing so, they had awakened a movement. And in that moment between life and legend, one truth burned brighter than the fires around him. A leader's body can fall, but his spirit, once awakened, becomes the heartbeat of a nation reborn. When the dust finally settled, silence swept across the land. The smoke had faded, but its scars remained, carved into walls, into faces, into memory. The leader's chair stood empty, yet his presence lingered in every heartbeat of the people he had awakened. For the first time in generations, the nation did not look outward for answers. It looked within. The farmers who once labored in silence now organized to rebuild their fields. The youth who had marched in fear now spoke with courage. Soldiers who once took orders without question began to defend their people, not their positions. The movement he sparked had outgrown him. It was no longer about one man's dream. It was about an entire continent's awakening. Across Africa, his story traveled like wildfire, whispered in classrooms, sung in markets, and remembered by those who still believed that unity could be stronger than division, and justice louder than fear. But transformation is never instant. The road ahead remained steep, and the old powers still lingered in shadows, waiting for the people to forget. Yet this time, something was different. They had seen what courage looked like. They had felt what freedom could mean. And once a nation has tasted truth, it cannot go back to sleep. In the quiet that followed, a question echoed across the continent, not of defeat, but of destiny. If one leader's courage could awaken a nation, what could a united Africa awaken in the world? The answer lies not in speeches or monuments, but in the hearts of those who refuse to give up, those who build, who rise, who remember. Because true leadership is not born from power, it's born from the people who dare to believe that their story isn't over yet.